"You don't belong here, sweetheart." 10 men surrounded Emma Richardson's table in the luxury retreat's dining hall, their shadows swallowing the candlelight. The biggest one, Chad Blackwell, 6'3" of Wall Street arrogance, leaned down until his face was inches from hers. "This summit costs 50 grand per person. It's for real executives making real decisions, not—" His eyes raked over her small frame with open contempt. "Whatever diversity hire you are." Emma set down her wine glass without a tremor. She'd killed her first terrorist at 23. Survived Hell Week with a fractured rib. Earned her SEAL trident when everyone said a woman never would. "You have no idea," she said quietly, "who you're talking to." Before we continue, hit that subscribe button and stay until the end. Comment your city below. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's begin. The Mercedes SUV climbed the winding mountain road as afternoon sun painted the Colorado peaks in shades of gold and amber. Emma Richardson sat in the back seat watching the luxury retreat center emerge from the pine forest like something from a billionaire's fever dream. Glass and timber stretched across the mountainside, all sharp angles and expensive taste. Her reflection in this window showed what she wanted it to show: a young woman in a tasteful blazer, minimal makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Unremarkable. Forgettable. Perfect. "First time at Summit Peak, miss?" the driver asked, catching her eye in the rearview mirror. "First time," Emma confirmed, keeping her voice light and friendly. She'd spent 6 weeks preparing this cover identity. Corporate consultant specializing in resilience training. Graduate degree in organizational psychology from Stanford. 3 years at a mid-tier consulting firm in Seattle. The legend was solid, backed by a website, LinkedIn profile, and references that would check out because they were run by people who knew what she really did for a living. What she really did was hunt terrorists in places that didn't officially exist on any mission brief. The SUV pulled up to the main entrance where a small crowd had gathered. Emma counted them automatically, 15 people. Mostly men, mostly in their 40s and 50s, all wearing the particular brand of confidence that came from corner offices and 7-figure bonuses. They were laughing, shaking hands, performing the ritual of powerful men recognizing other powerful men. She stepped out of the vehicle, pulling her small rolling bag behind her. The conversation didn't exactly stop, but it stuttered. Eyes flicked toward her, assessed, dismissed. She'd seen that look 1,000 times. In Bud's training when she'd shown up for Hell Week. In the team room when she'd first reported to her SEAL platoon. In every operation briefing where she'd been the only woman in a room full of men who'd already decided she didn't belong. "Excuse me," Emma said politely, moving toward the entrance. A hand landed on her shoulder, stopping her. Heavy. Presumptuous. "Whoa there, honey. Staff entrance is around back." The voice belonged to a man who looked like he'd played football in college and never quite gotten over it. Square jaw, perfectly maintained physique, expensive watch catching the light. His smile was all teeth and no warmth. Emma turned slowly, looking at the hand on her shoulder, until he removed it. "I'm not staff. I'm a participant." "A participant." His eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. "In the Executive Leadership Summit?" "That's right." He looked her up and down with unconcealed skepticism. "Huh. What company? I'm an independent consultant." "Independent." He drew the word out like it explained everything. "Right. Well, I'm Chad Blackwell, VP of Strategic Finance at Morrison Capital. 12 years on Wall Street before that." He gestured to the men behind him. "This is Derek Stone, Regional Director at Titan Sales. Marcus Webb, Senior Partner at Webb Consulting. Tom Patterson, Chief Operating Officer at..." It's nice to meet you all, Emma interrupted gently. I should check in. Chad's smile hardened. You know this summit runs $50,000 per person. It's designed for senior executives facing high-stakes decision-making in crisis situations. Are you sure you're in the right place? The subtext was clear as mountain air. You don't look like you belong here. Emma had two options. She could explain that her attendance was being paid for by a classified Department of Defense budget, that she was here to conduct a security assessment after intelligence indicated credible threats against several participants, and that her consulting business was a cover for active-duty SEAL operations. Or she could do what she'd done 100 times before, smile politely, and let him think whatever he wanted. I'm sure, she said simply, and walked inside. Behind her, she heard Derek's voice not quite quiet enough. Diversity hire. Has to be. Marcus laughed. 50 grand says she doesn't make it through the first team-building exercise. Emma kept walking, kept her face neutral, kept her breathing steady. The lobby was spectacular, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley, a stone fireplace tall enough to stand in furniture that cost more than most people's cars. A woman in an impeccable suit stood behind the check-in desk, her smile professionally warm. Welcome to Summit Peak. Name, please, Emma Richardson. Fingers clicked across a keyboard. Ah, yes, Ms. Richardson. We have you in the Aspen Suite. You're here for the full week-long Executive Leadership Intensive, correct? That's correct. Wonderful. Your welcome packet includes the schedule facility map and dress code information. Tonight's opening reception begins at 7 in the main dining hall business casual attire. Tomorrow morning, we begin with our famous obstacle course assessment at dawn. The woman's smile turned slightly conspiratorial. I should warn you, it's quite challenging. We have paramedics on standby. I appreciate the warning, Emma said, taking the packet and her room key. The Aspen Suite was stunning king bed with luxury linens, private balcony bathroom, with a soaking tub and separate shower. Emma set her bag on the bed and conducted a quick security sweep. She checked for cameras, microphones, any signs the room had been compromised. Clean. She pulled out her phone and sent a brief encrypted message to her handler, on site. Cover intact. No immediate concerns. The response came 30 seconds later. Copy. Maintain cover. Subject Alpha arrives tonight. Elevated threat assessment remains. Subject Alpha. That would be Richard Kensington, CEO of Kensington Technologies, a defense contractor whose cutting-edge drone systems had made him worth $3 billion and had also made him a high-value target for at least 4 foreign intelligence services. The threat assessment had come through 2 weeks ago, credible chatter about a potential kidnapping or assassination attempt. The FBI had wanted to cancel his attendance. Kensington had refused, so the Navy had sent Emma. Nobody looked at a quiet 26-year-old woman and thought highly trained special operations soldier capable of killing you 12 different ways with the items in this room, which was exactly the point. Emma unpacked methodically, hanging clothes in the closet, placing toiletries in the bathroom. Everything about her appearance screamed normal, average, harmless. The clothes were from J. Crew and Nordstrom. The makeup was drugstore brands. The jewelry was simple and inexpensive. She'd learned a long time ago that blending in was its own kind of power. At 6:45, she made her way to the main dining hall. The space had been transformed tables arranged in a large rectangle, candles flickering waitstaff, circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The executives had changed into business casual attire that probably cost more than Emma's entire cover wardrobe. They clustered in groups, voices loud, with the particular brand of confidence that came from never being told no. Emma took a glass of sparkling water from a passing server and found a position near the windows where she could observe the room. Security assessment, first, cover maintenance, second. She noted the exits, 2 main doors, 1 emergency exit, kitchen access through a service entrance. Windows were floor to ceiling, but didn't open. Good sight lines from the balcony above. If someone wanted to make a move on Kensington, this would be an opportunity. You look lost. Emma turned to find a woman in her 50s, silver hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing a power suit that meant business. Her eyes were kind, but assessing. Just taking it all in, Emma said. First time here? Patricia Morrison. I run Morrison Capital with my husband. She gestured toward Chad, who was holding court with several other men. That's him over there making sure everyone knows exactly how important he is. Emma smiled despite herself. Emma Richardson, independent consultant. Ah, so you're the one. Patricia's eyes twinkled. My husband mentioned you, said you seemed very young for this level of summit. I get that a lot. I'm sure you do. I started my company at 23, took it public at 30. Everyone told me I was too young, too inexperienced, too female. Patricia sipped her wine. I stopped listening to everyone and started listening to myself. Best decision I ever made. Before Emma could respond, a fork tapped against crystal. The room fell quiet. A distinguished man in his 60s stood at the head of the table, silver-haired and commanding. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. James Hartwell, and I'll be your lead facilitator this week. Welcome to Summit Peak's Executive Leadership Intensive, the most demanding leadership program in the world. Appreciative murmurs rippled through the room. This week will push you beyond your comfort zones, Hartwell continued. We've designed experiences that will test not just your physical capabilities, but your mental resilience, your decision-making under pressure, and your ability to lead when everything is falling apart. Some of you will discover strengths you didn't know you had. Others will discover limitations you've been avoiding. His eyes swept the room. Everyone will discover something true about themselves. Emma noticed Chad and Derek exchanging glances, their expressions confident to the point of arrogance. They'd already decided they had nothing to learn. Tonight we begin with a simple dinner, Hartwell said. Get to know your fellow participants. Tomorrow at dawn we'll see what you're really made of. Please find your seats. Emma checked the place cards, found her name near the center of the table. As she moved toward her seat, she noticed the men from earlier Chad's group had seats clustered together directly across from her. Perfect. They'd be watching her all night, judging, dismissing, underestimating. She sat down, smoothing her napkin across her lap. Chad settled into his seat across from her, flanked by Derek and Marcus. Tom Patterson took the seat next to Emma, giving her a brief nod that was more polite than friendly. So Emma Richardson, Chad said, his voice carrying across the table. Independent consultant. What exactly does that mean? Emma kept her tone pleasant. I work with organizations on resilience training, helping teams perform under pressure, building mental toughness crisis response protocols. Crisis response. Derek leaned forward, interested now. Like what active shooter situations? Sometimes. Also natural disasters, financial crises, leadership transitions. Anything that tests an organization's ability to function when the plan falls apart. Marcus smirked. Sounds pretty theoretical. Have you ever actually been in a real crisis? Emma met his eyes. A few. Such as, she couldn't tell them about Mosul, where she'd provided security for a high-value target extraction while insurgents closed in. Couldn't mention the hostage rescue in Somalia or the counter-terrorism operation in Yemen. So she kept it vague. I'm not at liberty to discuss specific clients or situations, confidentiality agreements. Chad laughed, not kindly. Convenient. Look, no offense, but this summit is designed for people who make decisions that affect thousands of employees, billions in revenue, major market movements. What perspective could you possibly offer us? The question hung in the air. Emma felt the attention of nearby diners shift toward their table. This was a test, she realized. Chad was establishing the pecking order, making sure everyone knew where she ranked, which was nowhere as far as he was concerned. Emma took a sip of water, giving herself a moment to choose her words. I think pressure looks different depending on where you're standing. You might decide whether to close a factory. I help prepare people for what comes next, the employees who lose their jobs, the communities that lose their anchor, the families trying to rebuild. Different perspective. Same crisis. It was a good answer, thoughtful and diplomatic. Patricia Morrison, seated further down the table, raised her wine glass slightly in approval. But Chad wasn't done. That's cute, really. But this summit is about leadership at the highest levels. No one here is worried about hand-holding employees through difficult transitions. We're worried about winning. Winning what? Emma asked. Everything. His smile was sharp. Market share, revenue, prestige, power. That's what leadership is, deciding who wins and who loses, then making sure you're always on the winning side. Derek nodded agreement. She probably doesn't understand that mindset. The summit's going to eat her alive. Tomorrow's obstacle course alone, Marcus added. Most people can't complete it. Last year, 3 participants had to be taken off on stretchers. And those were guys who'd played Division I football, run marathons, done Ironman triathlons. He looked at Emma. No offense, but you're what, maybe 115 pounds, 5'5", 5'6", Emma corrected mildly. Tom Patterson, who'd been quiet until now, cleared his throat. Maybe we should see how tomorrow goes before making predictions. Come on, Tom, Chad said. Look at her. She's going to struggle with the rope climb alone. The wall scaling, forget it. The mud crawl with a 40-pound pack. He shook his head. I give her 20 minutes before she quits. Emma cut into her salmon, chewing slowly. She'd learned a long time ago that the worst thing you could do when someone underestimated you was correct them. Let them think what they wanted. Let them build their assumptions into solid walls. And then when the moment came, walk straight through those walls without breaking stride. Maybe you're right, she said quietly. Chad blinked, surprised by her acquiescence. You're not going to defend yourself. What would be the point? You've already decided what I can and can't do. Tomorrow will prove one of us right. She met his eyes, her expression neutral, but somehow unsettling. I can wait. The table fell quiet. Something about Emma's calmness, her complete lack of defensiveness or aggression, created a strange tension. She should have been intimidated, flustered, angry. Instead, she seemed almost serene. Derek broke the silence with forced cheerfulness. Well, I respect the confidence. Misplaced, but I respect it. Dinner continued, with conversation flowing around Emma like water around a stone. The men discussed their companies, their achievements, their plans. They name-dropped and one-upped each other, performing masculinity and success like a choreographed dance. Emma listened, catalogued, assessed. She noted who deferred to whom, who had real confidence, versus who was compensating, who would be an ally if things went sideways. Patricia Morrison caught her eye from across the table and rolled her eyes slightly. Emma suppressed a smile. After dinner, as coffee and dessert were served, Dr. Hartwell stood again. A reminder, we begin tomorrow at 5 a.m. sharp. The obstacle course is 2 miles from the main building. Buses will depart at 4:30. Dress in athletic gear and prepare to be humbled. This course has broken professional athletes. It's designed to reveal your true character when comfort and pretense are stripped away. What's the record time? Someone called out. 11 minutes 43 seconds, Hartwell replied. Set by a Marine last year who'd just completed instructor training at Camp Pendleton. I'll tell you right now, none of you will come close. The goal isn't to set records. It's to finish, to push beyond what you think you're capable of and to help your fellow participants when they're struggling. Chad leaned back in his chair. I played linebacker at USC. Bench pressed 325. I'll break that record. Hartwell smiled. That's exactly the kind of ego that will make this week illuminating for you, Mr. Blackwell. Laughter rippled through the room, but Emma noticed Chad's jaw tighten. He wasn't used to being challenged or corrected. Tomorrow would be difficult for him in ways he didn't expect. The reception broke up around 9:30. Participants drifted back to their rooms, some hitting the bar for a nightcap, others heading straight to bed. Emma walked slowly, maintaining her cover, aware that Chad and his group were a few paces behind her. "She's going to embarrass herself tomorrow," Derek said, not bothering to lower his voice. "Probably won't even make it halfway through. $50 says she quits in the first 10 minutes, Marcus replied. "You're on." Emma kept walking, her face expressionless. She'd heard variations of these conversations more times than she could count. At Bud's, the instructors had made bets on when she'd quit. Her swim buddy had asked to be reassigned because he didn't want to be dragged down by a girl. The first time she'd shown up for live fire exercises, the rangemaster had made her prove she knew which end of the rifle the bullets came out of. She'd outlasted all of them. In her room, Emma set her alarm for 3:45 a.m. She didn't need much sleep. Years of military training had taught her to operate effectively on 4 hours or less. She changed into running shorts and a sports bra, then spent 30 minutes going through her mobility routine. Hip flexors, shoulders, thoracic, spine. The obstacle course tomorrow would be nothing compared to what she'd done in real training, but she couldn't afford to look too comfortable. She'd need to hold back to perform well enough to establish credibility, but not so well that she blew her cover. A delicate balance. Her phone buzzed. Encrypted message, Alpha arrives, EO300. Extra security requested denial. Maintain standard cover. Threat assessment elevated based on new signals intelligence. Stay alert. Emma read the message twice, then deleted it. Richard Kensington was arriving in the middle of the night, and he'd refused additional security, which meant if something happened, she was the only thing standing between a billionaire defense contractor and whoever wanted him dead. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow would be complicated. She needed to perform on the obstacle course, maintain her cover monitor, Kensington, and assess the facility's security vulnerabilities, all while being dismissed and underestimated by men who'd decided she didn't belong here. Just another day at the office. At 3:45, her alarm chirped softly. Emma was already awake. She dressed in dark athletic gear, pulled her hair into a tight ponytail, and made her way through the quiet halls toward the lobby. A few early risers were already there, looking nervous about the day ahead. Chad and his group arrived at 4:15, loud and confident, wearing expensive athletic gear that looked like it had never seen actual sweat. The buses arrived precisely at 4:30. Emma chose a seat near the back, watching as participants filed in. Patricia Morrison sat down next to her. "Couldn't sleep?" Patricia asked. "I never sleep well before a challenge," Emma admitted. It was true, even if the challenges Patricia was imagining were nothing like the ones Emma had actually faced. "My husband thinks you're going to wash out in the first hour." "I know. He's usually wrong about people." Patricia smiled. "I've built a very successful career betting against my husband's first impressions." The bus wound up the mountain road as dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. They rounded a final curve, and the obstacle course spread out before them like a nightmare made physical. Walls, rope, climbs, cargo nets, balance beams, mud crawls, and obstacles Emma didn't even have names for. It stretched across several acres of carefully designed terrain, each section more punishing than the last. The bus went silent. Dr. Hartwell stood at the front. "Welcome to hell, ladies and gentlemen. This course will take everything you have and demand more. The average completion time is 18 to 22 minutes. 15% of participants don't finish at all. Remember, this isn't about beating each other. It's about beating the part of yourself that wants to quit. They filed off the bus into the cold mountain morning. Emma could see her breath. Around her, executives stretched and psyched themselves up, nervous energy crackling through the group. Chad was doing high knees and arm swings, making sure everyone saw how ready he was. Derek shadowboxed quick jabs cutting through the air. Emma stood quietly, rolling her shoulders once, twice. In her mind, she was already running the course. She'd studied the facility layout in the briefing documents, had seen satellite imagery of the terrain. She knew which obstacles would be challenging, which would be easy, and exactly how hard she could push without revealing too much. "All right, everyone," Hartwell's voice cut through the morning. "I need a volunteer to go first. Who wants to set the pace?" Silence. Nobody wanted to be first to be measured and judged before they knew what they were up against. Hartwell's eyes swept the crowd and landed on Emma. A small smile crossed his face. "Ms. Richardson, you've been very quiet since you arrived. Why don't you show us what you've got?" Every head turned toward her. Chad and Derek exchanged delighted glances. This was going to be entertaining. The quiet girl from dinner was about to humiliate herself in front of everyone. Emma stepped forward, her movements calm and economical. She walked to the starting line, testing the ground with her foot, looking down the course toward the first obstacle. Behind her, she heard Marcus whisper, "This is going to be painful to watch." Emma closed her eyes, took 3 deep breaths. She thought about Hell Week, about the moment she'd almost quit during surf torture water. So cold, it felt like knives instructors screaming that she didn't belong, that she should ring the bell and end the suffering. She'd stayed. She'd endured. She'd earned her trident. This wasn't even close to that. She opened her eyes. "Ready?" Hartwell asked, stopwatch in hand. "Ready. Go!" Emma exploded forward. The first obstacle was a 6-foot wall that most people hit with momentum, scrambling and clawing their way over. Emma approached it differently. 3 strides from the wall, she planted her left foot and vaulted her hands, catching the top edge with perfect precision. She pulled herself over in one fluid motion, landing on the other side without breaking stride. Behind her, she heard someone say, "Holy shit!" The rope climb came next, 20 feet of thick manila rope hanging from a wooden beam. Emma gripped it and started climbing her technique textbook perfect. Feet clamping the rope, pulling with her arms smooth and economical. She'd done this 1,000 times in training, had climbed ropes in full gear, while instructors threw smoke grenades and fired blanks to simulate combat conditions. This was nothing. She touched the top marker, descended in controlled slides, hit the ground running. "Doctor." Hartwell stood with his stopwatch, his expression shifting from curious to astonished. He'd seen hundreds of people run this course. This wasn't normal. The balance beam section consisted of narrow wooden beams arranged in a zigzag pattern elevated 3 feet off the ground. Participants had to cross while carrying a 40-pound pack. Emma shouldered the pack, the weight settling familiar and comfortable across her shoulders, and walked across the beams like she was strolling down a sidewalk. Her balance was perfect, her steps confident, no hesitation. On the bus, Chad stood up from his seat. "What the hell?" "Maybe she's a gymnast," Tom Patterson suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Gymnasts don't move like that," Patricia Morrison said quietly. She was watching Emma with the intensity of someone who recognized they were seeing something extraordinary. The mud crawl stretched 100 yards under a low cargo net. Thick, cold mud that sucked at clothes and skin. Most people struggled exhausted themselves halfway through, had to be pulled out by safety personnel. Emma dropped to her belly and started pulling herself forward, her movements efficient and relentless. She'd done this in buds, in training, in actual combat situations, where the mud was mixed with sewage and the nets were replaced by razor wire. This was easy. She emerged on the other side, mud coating her athletic gear, her breathing steady, not even winded. She transitioned immediately to the tire run, a 50-yard section where you had to step precisely into tires laid out in a challenging pattern. One misstep, and you'd twist an ankle fall, waste precious seconds. Emma moved through it like she'd memorized the pattern, her foot placement perfect. "She's not even slowing down," Derek said, and for the first time, his voice held something other than dismissive confidence. It held concern. The cargo net climb towered 30 feet high. Emma attacked it with the same methodical precision she'd shown on everything else. Hand over hand, foot placement perfect, her core engaged, her breathing controlled. At the top, she swung over and descended the other side without pause. Hartwell clicked his stopwatch, checked the time, checked it again. His hands were shaking slightly. The wall complex came next, a series of increasingly difficult walls, ranging from 8 to 12 feet high, designed to break people who'd already exhausted themselves on earlier obstacles. Emma approached the 8-footer and leaped, catching the top edge, pulling herself over. The 10-footer required more technique. She used her momentum to drive one foot into the wall, pushed up, grabbed the edge, over. The 12-footer was the challenge, the one that stopped most people. Emma backed up, measured her approach, and ran at it full speed. She planted her foot 3 feet up the wall, pushed off, caught the edge with one hand, then the other, muscle memory, and thousands of hours of training taking over. She pulled herself up and over, dropping to the ground in a controlled fall. "Jesus Christ," Marcus whispered. The rope swing came next, a thick rope hanging over a water pit. You had to swing from one platform to another, then transition immediately to a climbing wall. Emma gripped the rope, swung with perfect timing, released at the apex, and landed on the far platform with both feet. Without pausing, she attacked the climbing wall, finding handholds that others would miss, moving up the 15-foot wall like she had suction cups on her hands. Tom Patterson turned to Chad. "Where did she learn to do this?" Chad didn't answer. His mouth was hanging open. The final section was a nightmare combination: rope obstacles, precision jumps across gaps, a final wall that required you to help imaginary teammates over before you could finish. Emma moved through it like she was running drills, like this was Tuesday morning training, and she had 100 more reps to go. Her precision jumps covered maximum distance with minimal effort. Her rope work was flawless. She helped the imaginary teammates with the same careful attention to protocol she'd use in a real operation, even though she could have skipped it and saved time. She crossed the finish line and stopped, hands on her knees, breathing hard, but not gasping. Controlled. Professional. Hartwell stared at his stopwatch like it had personally betrayed him. "Time?" Emma asked. 11 minutes, 19 seconds. The silence that followed was profound. Emma had just shattered the course record by 24 seconds. She'd made it look routine. On the bus, Chad sank slowly back into his seat. His face had gone pale. Everything he'd said last night, every dismissive comment, every confident prediction, it had all just been proven catastrophically wrong. "That's not possible," Derek said. She just did it," Patricia interrupted. "We all just watched her do it." Emma walked back toward the starting line, her expression neutral. Inside, she was cursing. She'd tried to hold back, had deliberately added time by being overly careful with the imaginary teammates, had avoided using her full speed on the sprinting sections. And she'd still destroyed the record by half a minute. Her cover was getting harder to maintain. Hartwell approached her, his face a mixture of awe and confusion. "Miss Richardson, that was the most impressive performance I've seen in 10 years of running this course. Where did you learn those techniques?" "Rock climbing mostly," Emma said, falling back on her prepared answers. "Martial arts. I've always been athletic." "That wasn't athletic. That was professional-level obstacle course training. Military-grade technique." Emma met his eyes. "I watch a lot of YouTube videos." Someone laughed nervously. The joke broke the tension slightly, but the questions remained. Nobody learned to move like that from YouTube videos. "Morrison," Hartwell called out. "You're up next." Chad approached the starting line like he was walking to his own execution. All his confidence from the night before had evaporated. He knew they all knew that he was about to be humiliated. "Good luck," Emma said as she passed him. He looked at her like she'd just spoken in ancient Greek. "Who are you?" "Just a consultant," Emma replied, and kept walking. Chad's run was competent. He was clearly athletic, had good upper body strength, decent cardiovascular fitness. But his technique was crude, inefficient. He powered through obstacles that Emma had finessed. He struggled where she'd glided. By the time he hit the mud crawl, he was already breathing hard, his movements getting sloppy. He finished in 14 minutes and 38 seconds. Respectable. Average. Completely unremarkable next to what Emma had just done. Derek went next, determined to prove something. He attacked the course with aggression, trying to make up for technique with raw force. It backfired. He slipped on the balance beam, lost 15 seconds. He exhausted himself on the cargo net climb, had to stop halfway up to catch his breath. He finished in 15 minutes and 12 seconds, bent over, hands on his knees, gasping. One by one, the other participants ran the course. Some finished, some didn't. Times ranged from 14 minutes to over 25. A few had to be helped off the course by safety personnel too exhausted to continue. Each run only emphasized how extraordinary Emma's performance had been. Patricia Morrison finished in 18 minutes 43 seconds and came off the course grinning. "That was the most fun I've had in years," she announced, and Emma believed her. By 8 o'clock, everyone had completed their runs. Hartwell gathered the group for a debrief, standing on a small platform so everyone could see him. "You've all just experienced something that will set the tone for this week," he began. "Some of you exceeded your own expectations. Some of you discovered limitations you didn't know you had. And all of you witnessed something extraordinary." He gestured toward Emma. "Ms. Richardson's performance this morning was the best I've seen in a decade. She set a new course record and made it look easy. I don't know where she trained or what her background is, but I know excellence when I see it." Scattered applause broke out. Emma felt every eye in the group on her. This was the opposite of maintaining a low profile. "The lesson here," Hartwell continued, "is that assumptions are dangerous. Many of you made assumptions about Ms. Richardson based on her appearance, her age, her gender. How many of you bet money that she wouldn't finish the course?" Several hands went up sheepishly, including Derek's. "How many of you dismissed her completely?" More hands. Chad stayed down, but his face said everything. Leadership requires us to see people as they are, not as we expect them to be. Ms. Richardson taught all of you that lesson this morning, whether she intended to or not. The group broke up, people drifting toward the buses for the ride back to the facility. Emma felt someone tap her shoulder. She turned to find Marcus Webb, the senior partner who'd mocked her at dinner. "I owe you an apology," he said. "What I said last night was out of line. I made assumptions about you based on nothing but my own bias." "Apology accepted," Emma said simply. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus lowered his voice. "That wasn't amateur technique. The way you moved through that course, I did 8 years in the Army before business school. I've seen Rangers run obstacle courses. You moved like them." Emma kept her expression neutral. "Like I said, I've always been athletic." "Right, athletic." Marcus studied her face, looking for cracks in her story. "Well, whatever your background is, you earned my respect today." He walked away, but Emma knew he wasn't satisfied with her answer. Seeds of doubt were being planted. People were starting to ask the right questions. The buses took them back to the facility where breakfast waited, an elaborate buffet with everything from protein smoothies to Belgian waffles. Emma filled a plate with eggs and fruit, found a quiet corner table. She needed to check in with her handler, needed to assess the security situation, needed to figure out how to dial back her performance before she completely blew her cover. Patricia Morrison sat down across from her uninvited. "Mind if I join you?" "Please." They ate in silence for a moment before Patricia spoke. "My father was a Marine. Served 2 tours in Vietnam. When I was growing up, he had these habits, the way he'd scan a room when he entered it, always positioning himself where he could see all the exits, the way he'd move economical and purposeful, the way he'd stay calm when everyone else was panicking." She looked at Emma over her coffee cup. "You have those same habits?" Emma's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do. I watched you last night at dinner. You positioned yourself where you could see the entire room. You counted the exits. When that waiter dropped a tray of glasses, everyone jumped. You didn't even flinch, you just turned your head, assessed the situation, and went back to your meal." Patricia leaned forward. "I've spent 40 years learning to read people, Ms. Richardson. It's how I built my company. And everything about you says military, probably special operations. So the question is, why are you pretending to be a corporate consultant?" Emma set down her fork. This was dangerous. Patricia was too smart, too observant. She could blow Emma's entire operation with one conversation in the wrong place. "If I were military," Emma said carefully, "which I'm not saying I am, don't you think there might be a good reason for keeping that quiet?" Patricia sat back, processing. "Security assessment." Emma said nothing. "Someone here is a target. Your protective detail." Patricia's eyes widened. "Richard Kensington. He arrives today, doesn't he? The billionaire defense contractor. There was chatter about threats against him." "I can neither confirm nor deny any of that," Emma said quietly. "But if you're as smart as I think you are, you'll keep this conversation between us." Patricia nodded slowly. "Your secret is safe with me, but you should know my husband isn't stupid either. He's humiliated and confused, but he's not stupid. He'll figure it out eventually." "I know. I'm trying to maintain cover as long as possible." "Why, if there's a threat, shouldn't we all know? Shouldn't security be increased?" "Increased security tips off whoever's planning whatever they're planning. They'll just wait for another opportunity. This way they think they have a window, they make their move, and we're ready for them." Emma met Patricia's eyes. "The best way to catch a predator is to look like prey. And you're the bait. I'm the trap." Patricia absorbed this, her face grave. "What do you need from me?" "Nothing. Just keep being yourself. Keep doing what you're doing. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you find me immediately. Don't go to security. Don't announce it publicly. You find me." "How will I find you?" Emma pulled out a business card, wrote a number on the back. "This goes directly to me. It looks like a regular cell number, but it's encrypted. Text me if you need to. 3 words, coffee sounds good. That's the emergency signal." Patricia took the card, slipped it into her pocket. "You're not what I expected when I saw you yesterday." "Nobody ever expects me. That's the whole point." The rest of the morning was devoted to classroom sessions, leadership theory, decision-making frameworks, case studies from major corporations. Emma participated, but didn't dominate, answered questions when called on, but didn't volunteer. She was trying to fade back into the background to let the morning's obstacle course performance be written off as a fluke or hidden talent rather than professional military training. It wasn't working. At lunch, Chad approached her table. "Can we talk?" Emma gestured to the empty seat across from her. "Sure." He sat down looking uncomfortable. "I owe you an apology for last night. What I said, how I acted, it was completely inappropriate. I made judgments about you based on nothing but how you looked, and I was completely wrong." "Thank you," Emma said. "I appreciate that. Can I ask you something?" Chad leaned forward. "Where did you really learn to move like that? Because I've been thinking about it all morning and nothing adds up. That rope climb your technique was perfect, the way you handled that cargo net. The balance beam with the weighted pack? That's not rock climbing gym training. That's military. Emma had prepared for this question. I had some friends in the service who taught me techniques. We'd train together on weekends. What branch? Army, mostly. Rangers. Some of them, yeah. Chad studied her face. You know what I think? I think you're prior service yourself. I think you did time in the military, and you're just not talking about it. Maybe you got out, went to business school, started this consulting thing. That would explain everything. It was a good theory, close enough to the truth to be believable. Emma decided to let him have it. You're pretty sharp, she said, neither confirming nor denying. How long? I'd rather not talk about it. Bad discharge? No, just complicated. Emma pushed her salad around her plate. I did my time, I learned a lot, and when it was over, I moved on. The skills transferred to corporate consulting. End of story. Chad nodded slowly. Fair enough. I respect that. But Emma, the way you moved this morning, that wasn't basic training? That was advanced, maybe elite level. Were you special operations? I really can't talk about it. Can't or won't? Both. He sat back, a new respect in his eyes. Okay, I get it. But just so you know, you've got my respect now. Whatever you did, wherever you served, you earned your place here. And I'm sorry I ever suggested otherwise. Thank you, Chad. He stood up, then paused. One more thing. Derek's still struggling with what happened this morning. He's a proud guy, and watching someone half his size make him look ordinary really messed with his head. He might try to prove something. Try to prove something how? This afternoon's session is hand-to-hand combat fundamentals. They bring in an instructor, pair people up, work on basic defensive techniques. Derek's got an amateur MMA background. He might try to challenge you, make himself feel better about this morning. Emma felt a cold knot form in her stomach. This was exactly the kind of situation she'd been trying to avoid. Thanks for the warning. Yeah, just be careful. Derek's technique isn't great, but he's strong and he's got something to prove. That's a bad combination. After Chad left, Emma sat alone with her salad, thinking through scenarios. If Derek challenged her, she had two options. She could decline, which would raise questions and make her look weak, or she could accept, which would require her to either lose on purpose, difficult when someone was attacking you with real aggression, or defend herself competently, which would reveal more about her capabilities. Neither option was good. Her phone buzzed. Encrypted message Alpha on site. Positioned in secured wing. Your presence requested for security briefing at 1400 hours. Maintain cover. Threat level remains elevated. Emma checked her watch. That gave her 1 hour before the briefing and 2 hours before the hand-to-hand combat session. She needed to think. Needed to plan. She excused herself from the dining hall and made her way back to her room. Once inside, she activated the encrypted communication system on her phone and called her handler. Status? The voice was clipped professional. Cover's deteriorating, Emma said. Performed too well on morning obstacle course. Set a course record. Multiple participants asking questions about military background. Can you maintain? For now. But this afternoon, there's a combat training session. One of the participants has an MMA background and ego issues. Intel suggests he might challenge me publicly. Silence on the other end of the line. If challenged, you can defend yourself, but avoid showcasing SEAL-level techniques. Look competent, but not professional. Understand. Understood. How's Alpha? Secure for now. He wants to participate in all summit activities. We advised against it. He overruled us. Of course he did. Emma rubbed her temples. Has threat assessment changed? Signal intelligence picked up additional chatter. 3 foreign entities showing interest in Alpha's location. We believe someone local has been providing information. Stay alert. Copy that. Anything else? The combat instructor for this afternoon's session is one of ours, Captain Mike Torres, Force Recon Marine. He's read in on your operation. If things get complicated, he'll have your back. That was good news. At least she'd have one ally in the room. The briefing at 2 o'clock took place in a secured conference room in the facility's administrative wing. Richard Kensington sat at the head of the table looking exactly like his Forbes magazine photo, silver hair, sharp suit, eyes that missed nothing. He was flanked by 2 private security contractors who looked like exactly what they were: former military competent, but not elite. Emma entered in her consultant cover, but Kensington's eyes found her immediately and held. He knew. Of course he knew. It was his life on the line. "Ms. Richardson," he said, "I've heard interesting things about your obstacle course performance this morning." "I got lucky," Emma replied, sliding into her seat. "Luck had nothing to do with it." He turned to the security contractors. "Gentlemen, give us the room." They exchanged glances but left without argument. The door closed. Kensington's demeanor changed immediately. "Lieutenant Martinez," he said, using her real name. "I read your file. Afghanistan, Somalia, Yemen. 3 successful hostage extractions, 2 counterterrorism operations, 1 Silver Star. You're one of the Navy's most decorated female SEALs." Emma said nothing. "I understand you're here to keep me alive," Kensington continued. "I appreciate that. But I want to make something clear. I didn't build a $3 billion company by hiding in secured rooms. I'm going to participate in this summit's activities. All of them. If someone wants to take a run at me, let them try. You'll be there to stop them." "Sir, that's not negotiable." His voice was hard. "I've been threatened before. I'll be threatened again. I refuse to live in fear. Your job is to protect me while I live my life, not to lock me in a box." Emma recognized the type alpha male used to getting his way, convinced his money and success made him invincible. These were always the hardest protectees because they took unnecessary risks and ignored professional security advice. "I understand, sir, but if I tell you to move, you move. If I tell you to get down, you get down. If I tell you to run, you run. My job is to keep you alive. Your job is to let me do my job. Are we clear?" Kensington's eyes hardened. "Are you giving me orders, Lieutenant?" "I'm explaining the parameters of keeping you alive. You can take them or leave them, but if you leave them, I can't guarantee your safety." They stared at each other across the conference table. Finally, Kensington smiled. "You've got spine. I like that. Okay, Lieutenant. I'll follow your instructions in a crisis, but until then I participate fully. Deal. Deal. Good. Now, what's your assessment of the facility's security?" Emma spent the next 30 minutes walking him through vulnerabilities she'd identified, sight lines, access points, gaps in surveillance, coverage, response time limitations. Kensington listened carefully, asked smart questions, and by the end of the briefing, Emma had a grudging respect for him. He was arrogant, but he wasn't stupid. At 3:30, she made her way to the facility's gymnasium, where mats had been laid out for the afternoon's hand-to-hand combat session. Other participants were already there, changing into athletic gear, stretching, joking nervously about what was coming. Captain Mike Torres stood at the center of the room, 6 feet of solid marine muscle buzz-cut and no-nonsense expression. Their eyes met briefly. He gave her the smallest nod of acknowledgement. "All right, everyone, let's get started," Torres announced. "I'm Captain Torres, and I'll be your instructor for basic defensive combat techniques. This session is about learning to protect yourself in close-quarter situations. We'll work on stance, basic strikes, defensive postures, and simple takedowns. Pair up." Emma found herself facing Tom Patterson, who looked relieved. "At least I got someone my own size," he joked. They worked through basic drills: how to throw a proper punch, how to protect your face, how to avoid telegraphing your movements. Torres moved through the room correcting techniques, demonstrating on volunteers. Emma performed competently, but not expertly, making deliberate small mistakes that Torres corrected. Then Derek's voice cut across the gym. "Hey, Captain Torres, can I make a request?" Torres turned. "What is it, Mr. Stone? I'd like to demonstrate some techniques with Ms. Richardson. I have some amateur fighting experience, and I think it would be valuable for the group to see how these basics work against someone who actually knows what they're doing." The room went quiet. Everyone understood what was really happening. Derek was trying to salvage his ego by beating someone in front of an audience. Emma felt every eye turn toward her. Torres met her gaze, asking a silent question. "Can you handle this?" She gave him the smallest nod. "All right," Torres said slowly. "But this is controlled sparring. I want clean technique. No ego, no aggression. Understood?" "Understood," Derek said, moving to the center mat. Emma took a breath, mentally calibrated how much skill to show, and stepped forward to meet him. Derek rolled his shoulders, bouncing on the balls of his feet, like he was entering the octagon. His eyes held that particular gleam Emma had seen before a man who needed to prove something, consequences be damned. The other participants formed a loose circle around the mat, their nervous energy palpable. Emma took her position, hands up in a basic defensive stance. She kept her weight centered, her breathing steady. In her mind, she was already 3 moves ahead, calculating exactly how much to give, how much to hold back. "Light contact only," Torres reminded them. "This is about technique, not dominance." "Of course," Derek said, but his smile said otherwise. They circled each other. Derek threw a testing jab, telegraphing it so obviously that Emma had time to count to 3 before slipping it. She didn't counter, just repositioned. He threw another combination faster this time, with more intent. Emma deflected the first strike, slipped, the second stepped back from the third. "Come on," Derek said. "Fight back a little." Emma threw a controlled jab toward his shoulder, pulled it just short. Derek blocked it easily. Grinned. "That all you got?" The next combination came harder, faster. Derek was escalating his technique, deteriorating as his ego took over. A hook aimed at her ribs carried real power behind it. Emma stepped inside. It deflected his arm and tapped his solar plexus with an open palm, a warning, not an attack. Derek's eyes flashed with anger. "You're quicker than you look." "Mr. Stone, control yourself," Torres warned. "I'm controlled, just warming up." But he wasn't controlled. Emma could see it in his stance, in the tension in his shoulders. He was fighting his embarrassment from this morning, fighting his wounded pride, fighting the fact that this small woman had made him look ordinary. She'd seen it 100 times, men who confused physical dominance with worth, who needed to win to feel whole. Derek feinted left, then came in hard with a right cross aimed at her head. It wasn't light contact. It wasn't controlled sparring. It was a real punch thrown with real intent. Emma's training took over. She slipped under the punch, used his momentum against him, and was halfway through a takedown before she caught herself. She aborted the technique, stepped back, instead creating distance. "Whoa," someone in the crowd said. Derek reset, breathing harder now. "Nice move. Where'd you learn that?" "YouTube," Emma said, falling back on her earlier joke. Nobody laughed this time. Derek came at her again, throwing a flurry of strikes that had abandoned all pretense of control. Emma deflected, slipped, moved, staying just ahead of his attacks. She could feel Torres watching, ready to intervene, but she also knew that stopping it now would only make things worse. Derek needed to exhaust himself, needed to work through whatever he was trying to prove. A wild haymaker came at her head. Emma ducked under it, stepped inside his guard, and executed a perfect hip throw that sent Derek tumbling across the mat. The technique was flawless, the kind of throw that took years to master. She'd done it without thinking, muscle memory overriding tactical judgment. The gymnasium went silent. Derek lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. The wind knocked out of him. Torres moved to check on him, but his eyes were on Emma, and they held a warning. "You just showed too much." Emma stepped back, hands dropping to her sides, trying to look as surprised as everyone else by what had just happened. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "That throw," Chad said slowly, "was perfect, like textbook perfect." Derek sat up, gasping for air. "What the hell was that? Just defensive technique," Emma said, but her voice lacked conviction. She'd blown it. She'd let her training override her cover, and now everyone in this room knew she was operating at a level far beyond what she'd claimed. Patricia Morrison was staring at her with an expression that said, "I knew it." Torres clapped his hands. "All right, that's enough for today. Everyone hit the showers. Mr. Stone, you okay?" "Yeah," Derek wheezed. "Ego's bruised, but I'll live." As the group dispersed, Emma felt her phone buzz in her pocket. She pulled it out, saw the encrypted message, "Security breach. Unknown vehicle approaching facility. All personnel on alert. Alpha secure. Maintain position." Her heart rate spiked. This was it. The threat they'd been preparing for was materializing. She looked up to find Torres beside her. "You got the alert?" "Yeah." "What do you need?" "Keep everyone in the facility. Lock down the gymnasium. Make it look like you're just extending the session." Emma was already moving toward the door. "I need to get to Alpha." "Go. I've got this." Emma slipped out of the gymnasium and immediately shifted into operator mode. The corporate consultant mask fell away. Her movements became economical, purposeful, predatory. She took the stairs 3 at a time, her mind calculating distances, response times, threat vectors. She reached the secured wing where Kensington was staying in under 2 minutes. His security contractors were already in position outside his door, weapons drawn, but held low. "Sit rep," Emma demanded. The larger contractor, a former Army Ranger named Davidson, turned to her. "Unknown vehicle breached the outer perimeter 3 minutes ago. 2 occupants, both male, heavily armed. They disabled the main gate security system. Local PD has been notified, but response time is 12 to 15 minutes. "Where's Alpha?" "Inside. He refuses to evacuate." "Of course he does." Emma keyed her comm. "This is Lieutenant Martinez. I need eyes on the vehicle. Current location, direction of travel, any identifying marks." A voice crackled back. "Vehicle is a black SUV, tinted windows, no plates. Currently approaching main building from the northeast access road. ETA 3 minutes. Emma's mind raced through scenarios. 3 minutes to prepare, 12 to 15 until backup arrived. 2 hostiles, unknown capabilities, but heavily armed, suggested professional operators. They'd disabled security, which meant planning and reconnaissance. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was a targeted operation. "All right, listen up," Emma said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd done this before. "Davidson, you stay on this door. Nobody gets through. Miller, you're with me. We're going to intercept before they reach this wing." "Ma'am, with respect, maybe we should wait for local PD. In 12 minutes, they could extract Alpha and be gone. We intercept now." Emma checked the pistol she'd kept concealed at the small of her back since arriving. "Let's move." She and Miller, the second contractor, made their way down the corridor toward the main building entrance. Emma's training kicked in fully now, scanning corners, checking sightlines, listening for footsteps, breathing controlled and steady. This was what she'd been trained for, what she was good at. They reached the main entrance just as the black SUV pulled up outside. Emma positioned herself behind a support column gun drawn, but held low. Miller took position on the opposite side. 2 men exited the vehicle. Both wore tactical gear, both carried suppressed weapons. They moved with the confidence of professionals who'd done this before. "Armed hostiles at main entrance," Emma whispered into her comm. Engaging. The first hostile pushed through the door, his weapon up and ready. Emma stepped out from behind the column, her pistol trained on his center mass. Federal agent, drop your weapon. The man hesitated for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Emma to register his surprise. Then he made his choice. His weapon started to swing toward her. Emma fired twice. Center, mass. The man went down. The second hostile immediately opened fire, suppressed rounds, punching through the lobby, shattering glass. Emma dove behind the reception desk, Miller returning fire from his position. The hostile retreated toward the door, using the first man's body as partial cover. Subject down, Emma reported. Second subject retreating to vehicle. She popped up, acquired the target, fired 3 rounds. 2 hit, but the second hostile made it outside, bleeding but mobile. The SUV's engine roared to life. Emma sprinted for the door, saw the vehicle accelerating away. She took a knee, steadied her aim, and put 2 rounds through the rear windshield. The SUV swerved, but kept going, disappearing down the access road. Subject 2 wounded but mobile. Vehicle fleeing south on access road. Alert local PD. Emma returned to the lobby where Miller was checking the first hostile. Dead, he confirmed. Professional gear, no identification. Emma searched the body quickly. No wallet, no ID, no phone. Just weapons, ammunition, and a tactical vest. She pulled off the man's balaclava, memorized his face, took photos with her phone. Martinez! Davidson's voice crackled over the comm. We've got a problem. 3 more hostiles approaching from the west side. They came in through the kitchen entrance. Emma's blood went cold. The 2 at the front had been a distraction. The real assault team had come in through another entry point while security was focused on the obvious threat. Miller, lock down this entrance. Don't let anyone in or out. Emma was already running toward the west wing. Davidson, fall back to Alpha's position. Barricade the door. She took the stairs again, her legs burning, her breath coming in controlled gasps. She could hear shouting ahead, the sound of breaking glass. She rounded a corner and nearly collided with Tom Patterson, who looked terrified. What's happening? He demanded. Get back to your room. Lock the door. Stay away from windows. Emma pushed past him, kept moving. The secured wing corridor was chaos. 2 of the hostiles were engaged with Davidson, who'd taken cover behind an overturned table. The third hostile was working on Kensington's door with some kind of breaching tool. Emma didn't hesitate. She came in fast and low, firing as she moved. The hostile working the door went down a clean headshot. The other 2 turned toward her, weapons swinging. Davidson used the distraction to take 1 down with a 3-round burst. The last hostile, realizing he was outgunned and outnumbered, retreated down the corridor. Emma pursued, but he'd rounded a corner before she could get a clear shot. She heard a door crash open, heard screaming. She came around the corner to find the hostile had taken a hostage, one of the summit participants. A young man named Robert Chang pulled tight against the hostile's body armor with a gun to his head. Back off! The hostile shouted in accented English. Russian, Emma thought. Back off or he dies. Emma kept her weapon trained on the hostile's head, looking for an angle, a clean shot. Let him go. There's no escape here. Your team is down. Local police are 2 minutes out. I said back off. Robert was hyperventilating, his eyes wide with terror. Please, please, don't. Shut up. The hostile pressed the gun harder against Robert's temple. Emma's mind raced through options. She could take the shot, but the angle was bad, and Robert's panic was making him move unpredictably. If she missed, or if the hostile's death spasm triggered his finger, Robert died. She could negotiate, but that gave the hostile time to think, time to find another play. She could wait for backup, but that meant holding this position for 2 more minutes, while the hostile grew more desperate. Then she saw at Robert's foot position. He was off balance weight on his heels, held up more by the hostel's grip than his own strength. If Robert dropped the hostel, would have to choose between holding him up or maintaining his weapon position. He couldn't do both. Emma caught Robert's eyes, held them. "Robert, when I say drop, you drop. Do you understand?" Robert's eyes widened further, but he managed a small nod. "Don't," the hostel started. "Drop," Emma shouted. Robert's legs went out from under him. The hostel's arm dropped to catch him, his weapon coming off Robert's head for a fraction of a second. Emma fired once. The round took the hostel in the left eye, and he went down hard. Robert scrambled away, sobbing. Emma kept her weapon on the hostel until she confirmed he was dead, then quickly checked the corridor. Clear. Davidson's status. Secured. Alpha is safe. We've got 4 hostiles down total. Copy. I'm bringing a civilian back to the secured area. Have medical standing by for shock treatment. Emma helped Robert to his feet. He was shaking so hard he could barely walk. You're okay. You're safe. I need you to breathe. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Can you do that for me? Robert nodded, tried to breathe, managed to get his panic under control enough to move. She got him back to the secured wing where Davidson had set up a temporary medical station. Other participants were emerging from their rooms, faces, pale voices shaking as they tried to understand what had just happened. Emma found Kensington standing in his doorway looking remarkably calm for someone who'd just survived an attempted kidnapping. "Lieutenant Martinez, effective work. Stay in your room, sir. Scene isn't secured yet." Was that really necessary, killing all of them? Emma stared at him. They came here heavily armed to kidnap or kill you. What did you think was going to happen? I suppose I thought we'd capture at least one for interrogation. I saved one of your fellow participants from having his brains blown out. You're welcome. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Local police, probably FBI, right behind them. Emma's cover was completely blown now. No corporate consultant shot 4 armed hostiles with the precision she'd just displayed. Torres appeared at the end of the corridor, his expression grim. "Martinez, you've got company coming. Half the summit just watched you operate like a Tier 1 asset. Your cover's done." "I know. What do you need?" "Help maintaining security until FBI arrives. Make sure nobody leaves, nobody makes phone calls, nobody posts on social media. This scene needs to be locked down." "I'm on it." Torres paused. "That was good work. Clean shots, solid tactical thinking. Where'd you learn to operate like that?" Emma met his eyes. "YouTube videos," when he actually laughed. "Right, YouTube. I'll spread the word nobody talks about what they saw until federal agents clear it." The next 30 minutes were chaos. Local police arrived first, guns drawn, shouting orders. Emma identified herself, showed credentials, got them organized into a proper perimeter. FBI arrived 20 minutes later, led by a no-nonsense woman named Special Agent Susan Walsh, who took one look at the scene and knew exactly what she was dealing with. "Lieutenant Martinez," Walsh said. "Navy SEAL undercover security for Kensington. I read the operation brief. Hell of a job." "Thank you, ma'am." "We'll need statements from everyone. My team will handle scene processing. Your cover's blown, obviously. We'll need to brief the participants on security protocols, make sure they understand what they can and can't say publicly." "Understood." Walsh looked around at the aftermath bullet holes in walls, blood on floors, 4 dead hostiles, and a room full of shaken executives. "This is going to be one hell of a debrief." An hour later, all the summit participants were assembled in the main conference room. Emma stood at the front beside Agent Walsh, still in her tactical gear, her cover identity completely abandoned. Faces stared at her with mixtures of shock, awe, fear, and confusion. Chad sat in the front row, his mouth still slightly open. Derek was 2 rows back, looking like he'd been hit by a truck. Patricia Morrison had a small smile on her face, that said she'd known all along. "Ladies and gentlemen," Walsh began, "I'm Special Agent Susan Walsh with the FBI. What happened here today was an attempted kidnapping of Richard Kensington by what we believe was a team of foreign operatives. Thanks to the actions of Lieutenant Emma Martinez, U.S. Navy SEALs, that attempt was thwarted." Murmurs rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "Navy SEAL, Lieutenant Martinez has been operating undercover at this facility as a corporate consultant," Walsh continued. "Her actual mission was to provide security for Mr. Kensington based on credible threats we received 2 weeks ago. What you witnessed today was a highly trained special operations soldier doing her job." Emma stepped forward. "I apologize for the deception. I know many of you have questions. I'll answer what I can, but there are operational security limitations on what I can discuss." Chad raised his hand. "So everything, the obstacle course, the combat training, all of it, that was you holding back?" "Yes." "How much were you holding back?" Emma considered her answer. "The obstacle course record I set, I could probably do it in under 9 minutes if I pushed. The sparring session with Derek. I pulled every technique. If I'd wanted to hurt him, I could have done it a dozen different ways before he landed a single strike." Derek looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. "The dinner conversation that first night," Marcus Webb said slowly. "When Chad was dismissing you, questioning whether you belonged here, you knew the whole time what you were capable of. You just let us think whatever we wanted. That's how undercover work operates. You don't correct assumptions. You use them." "But why?" Chad asked. "Why go through all of this? Why not just have obvious security?" Walsh answered. "Because obvious security makes threats wait for better opportunities. Lieutenant Martinez's cover allowed us to draw out the operatives when we were ready for them on our terms in a controlled environment." "Controlled," someone laughed bitterly. 5 people died here today." 5 hostiles who came here to commit kidnapping or murder, Emma corrected. No civilians were killed. No summit participants were seriously injured. That's the definition of controlled. Patricia Morrison stood up. "I want to say something. Yesterday, many of us, myself included, made assumptions about Lieutenant Martinez based on her appearance. We saw a young woman who didn't look like she belonged in our world. Some of us were dismissive. Some were outright rude." She looked at Chad and Derek. "What we witnessed today should humble all of us. We spend our lives judging books by their covers, making snap decisions about people's worth based on superficial characteristics. Lieutenant Martinez taught us a valuable lesson about the danger of assumptions." "She also saved lives," Tom Patterson added. "I saw what she did for Robert Chang. The hostage situation, she could have taken the safe play, waited for backup. Instead, she risked a difficult shot to save him. That takes incredible skill and even more incredible courage." Robert, still pale and shaken, nodded. "She saved my life. I was dead if she hadn't been here." Emma felt uncomfortable with the attention, with the praise. "I was doing my job, that's all." "That's not all," Chad said. "I owe you an apology that goes way deeper than the one I gave you earlier. I didn't just misjudge your capabilities. I disrespected who you are as a person. I made cruel assumptions based on nothing but bias and arrogance. What you did today, what you've accomplished in your career." His voice caught. "I'm ashamed of how I treated you." "Me too," Derek added quietly. "Challenging you the way I did, trying to prove something, I was a complete ass. You could have humiliated me in front of everyone, but you didn't. You showed restraint even when I didn't deserve it." Emma looked at the faces around the room, executives who'd dismissed her, questioned her, underestimated her. 24 hours ago, they'd seen a small, quiet woman who didn't belong. Now they were seeing something else entirely. "I don't need apologies," Emma said. "I need you to remember this. Remember how wrong your first impressions were. Remember how you felt when reality didn't match your assumptions. And maybe when you get back to your companies and your corner offices, remember that the people you're dismissing might be capable of extraordinary things you can't see." The room fell silent, Walsh stepped forward. All right, everyone. Needs to give statements to my agents. This will take several hours. The summit is officially suspended. You'll all be able to return home by tomorrow afternoon. And I need to emphasize what happened here today is part of an ongoing investigation. Do not discuss it on social media, do not talk to the press, do not share details with anyone outside this room. Is that clear? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. As the participants filed out to give their statements, Kensington approached Emma. Lieutenant, I owe you an apology as well. I was arrogant about security. I thought my money and success made me untouchable. Today proved me wrong. You're welcome, sir. That shot you took the hostage situation, I'm told that was extremely difficult. 1 in 100 snipers could make it. I'm not a sniper. I just did what needed to be done. Kensington studied her face. How old are you, Lieutenant? 26. 26. He shook his head. When I was 26, I was still trying to figure out how to run a company. You're out here saving lives and stopping international kidnapping operations. The world needs more people like you. The world needs more people willing to do the work nobody sees. The SEAL teams, the intelligence analysts, the logistics personnel making sure operations run smoothly. I'm just one person doing one job. A job you do exceptionally well. Kensington pulled out a business card. When you're done with the Navy, if you ever want to transition to private sector security consulting, real consulting, not undercover work, call me. I'll pay you whatever you want. Emma took the card out of politeness, knowing she'd never call. Thank you, sir. Patricia Morrison was the last to approach. So Emma Richardson isn't even your real name. Emma Martinez. The Richardson was cover. I knew there was something about you. Military bearing, situational awareness, the way you moved. My father taught me to recognize it. Patricia smiled. For what it's worth, you're exactly the kind of person we need more of in positions of power. Smart, capable, humble. If you ever want to leave special operations for the business world, I'd hire you in a heartbeat. I appreciate that. But I think I'll stick with what I know. Saving the world one operation at a time. Something like that. Agent Walsh called Emma over. Martinez, we need your full statement. Every detail, every shot, every decision. This is going to be a complex investigation. Emma nodded, following Walsh to a private office. Behind her, she could hear the participants still talking, processing what they'd witnessed, reconsidering everything they thought they knew about capability, about strength, about who deserved respect. She'd come here to stop a threat and protect an asset. Mission accomplished. But somewhere along the way, she'd also taught a room full of powerful people, a lesson they'd never forget, that the most dangerous person in the room is often the one you never see coming. The statement took 3 hours. Emma sat across from Agent Walsh in a windowless conference room, walking through every second of the operation from her arrival at the facility to the final shot that had saved Robert Chang's life. Walsh recorded everything, asked clarifying questions, took notes in tight, efficient handwriting that reminded Emma of after-action reports in the teams. The shot on the hostage-taker, Walsh said. Talk me through your decision-making process. Emma leaned back, remembering. I had maybe 2 seconds to assess. The hostile was Russian, probably ex-military based on his weapon handling and tactical positioning. He was desperate, which made him dangerous but also predictable. Robert was panicking, which created movement I had to account for. The angle was bad, maybe 75 degrees from ideal. So why take it? Because waiting meant Robert died. The hostile wasn't negotiating in good faith. He was buying time to figure out his next move. Another 30 seconds, and he might have executed Robert just to make a point, then tried to shoot his way out. Emma met Walsh's eyes. I've been in enough hostage situations to recognize when talking stops working. Walsh made a note. The other hostiles you didn't attempt to wound or disable. All kill shots. They were armed professionals conducting a coordinated assault. You don't wound people like that. You stop the threat permanently. Emma's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. Every one of those men knew what they were signing up for when they took this job. They made their choice. Any regret? About saving lives, no. Walsh studied her for a long moment. You're 26 years old. Most people your age are worried about student loans and entry-level jobs. You just killed 4 people without hesitation. How do you process that? Emma had been asked versions of this question before, by psychologists, by commanding officers, by the chaplain after her first combat kill in Afghanistan. The answer was always complicated. I don't think of them as people in the moment, she said slowly. They're threats to be neutralized, problems to be solved. You can't hesitate if you're thinking about someone's family or childhood or dreams. You act and you process later. She paused. The processing is harder. That's when they become real again. When you think about the fact that those men woke up this morning, put on their gear, and thought they'd survive the day. But if I spend too much time on that, I can't do my job. So I compartmentalize. Healthy coping mechanism or avoidance? Both, probably. But it keeps me functional. Walsh nodded, understanding in her eyes. For what it's worth, you made the right calls today. Clean operation, minimal collateral damage, asset protected. That's as good as it gets. Doesn't always feel good. No, it doesn't. Walsh closed her notebook. We're done here. You'll need to stay available for follow-up questions as we process the scene and identify the hostiles. Probably looking at a week of debriefs. What about the participants? How long before they can leave? Tomorrow afternoon, like I said. We'll have statements from everyone by then. Walsh stood stretched. They're going to want to talk to you. Ask questions. Try to understand what they witnessed. You up for that? Emma wasn't sure. Part of her wanted to disappear to get back to her team, where everyone understood what she did and why. But another part recognized that these people had been through trauma today, had watched violence unfold in front of them, and deserved answers. Yeah, I can do that. The conference room where the participants had gathered felt different now. The easy confidence and competitive energy from yesterday had been replaced by something quieter, more contemplative. People sat in small clusters, speaking in low voices, jumping at sudden sounds. Trauma response. Emma recognized. They'd witnessed something that shattered their sense of safety. She entered, and conversation stopped. All eyes turned to her. Chad was the first to approach. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past few hours. Emma, or should I call you Lieutenant? Emma's fine. We've been talking, trying to process everything. He ran a hand through his hair. I keep replaying the moment when you took that shot. The one that saved Robert. I've made a lot of high-pressure decisions in my career, but nothing like that. Nothing where someone's life literally depended on me being perfect. You learn to handle it. Training experience, repetition. You do it enough times and the pressure becomes background noise. How many times have you been in situations like that? Emma considered lying, keeping it vague. But these people had earned honesty. Today was my 7th hostage situation. 4th time I've had to take the shot. The room went silent. 7, Derek repeated. You're 26. How is that even possible? SEAL teams deploy to some of the worst places in the world. Hostage rescues, counter-terrorism operations, direct action missions against high-value targets. You rack up experience fast. Emma pulled out a chair, sat down. But today was different. Usually the hostages are people I've never met, don't know. Having Robert right there, having worked alongside him for 2 days, that made it harder. Robert, sitting across the room, spoke up. His voice was hoarse. You saved my life. I keep thinking about what would have happened if you'd missed, or if you hadn't been here at all. You don't need to think about that. Focus on what did happen. You survived. Because of you. Emma shook her head. Because you trusted me. When I told you to drop, you dropped immediately. No hesitation, no second guessing. That's what saved you. I just pulled the trigger. That's not... Robert's voice broke. I thought I was going to die. I could feel the gun against my head. I could smell the man's sweat. And then you were so calm. How do you stay calm in moments like that? Training helps, but mostly you have to trust yourself. Trust that you've prepared, that you know what you're doing, that your hands will do what your brain tells them to. Emma looked around the room. That's what separates amateurs from professionals. Amateurs hope they'll perform under pressure. Professionals know they will because they've done it before. Tom Patterson leaned forward. Can I ask you something? The obstacle course yesterday morning, you said you were at maybe 70% capability. Was that true? Closer to 60, probably. Jesus. Tom shook his head. And during the combat training, when Derek was coming at you, you were pulling every technique. Every single one. If I'd wanted to hurt him, really hurt him, I had dozens of opportunities. But that wasn't the mission. The mission was to maintain cover while staying ready for actual threats. Derek spoke up, his voice quiet. I've been sitting here feeling like an idiot. I challenged you, tried to prove I was tough, acted like a complete ass. And the whole time you could have destroyed me without breaking a sweat. You weren't an idiot. You were proud, and you let your ego override your judgment. We've all been there. Emma met his eyes. The important thing is what you do next. Do you learn from it, or do you double down on the behavior that got you here? I want to learn. God, do I want to learn? Derek rubbed his face. Everything I thought I knew about strength, about power, about what makes someone dangerous, it all got turned upside down in the past 24 hours. Marcus Webb had been quiet, but now he spoke. You know what keeps replaying in my mind dinner that first night? The way we treated you, the assumptions we made. And you just sat there letting us think whatever we wanted, staying calm and composed. I'm a senior partner at a major consulting firm. I've spent 20 years reading people and I completely missed who you were. That's because you were looking at what you expected to see, Patricia Morrison interjected. We all were. Emma looked like a young woman out of her depth, so that's what we saw. We didn't look deeper. But how do we look deeper? Chad asked. How do we avoid making the same mistakes again? Emma thought about it. You start by questioning your first impressions. When you meet someone and immediately form an opinion, especially a negative one, ask yourself, why? What evidence are you actually using? Is it based on their actions and words, or is it based on your biases about how certain people should look or act? That's harder than it sounds, Tom said. Everything worth doing is hard. But the alternative is going through life making the same mistakes, hurting people, missing opportunities because you couldn't see past your own assumptions. Emma stood up, walked to the window. I've spent my entire military career dealing with people who assumed I couldn't do the job. Instructors who thought I'd quit. Teammates who thought I'd slow them down. Officers who thought having a woman on the team would cause problems. Every single day, I had to prove myself in ways my male teammates never did. How did you handle it? Robert asked. At first I got angry. I'd try to convince people they were wrong about me. That never worked. It just made them dig in harder. Emma turned back to face the group. Eventually I learned to let my performance speak for itself. I couldn't control what people thought about me, but I could control how well I did my job. So I focused on being excellent, on being so good at what I did that the assumptions became irrelevant. But that puts all the burden on you, Patricia said. You have to work twice as hard just to be seen as equal. Yeah, it does. And that's not fair. Emma's voice was steady. But fair doesn't matter when you're trying to survive Hell Week or execute a hostage rescue. What matters is being ready, being capable, being the person your team can count on when everything goes wrong. You can fight for fairness later. In the moment, you just do the work. The room fell silent, everyone processing her words. Then Agent Walsh appeared in the doorway. "Martinez, I need you for a minute." Emma followed her into the corridor, where Walsh's expression had shifted to something grim. "We identified the hostiles. Russian intelligence officers, 3 of them. The 4th was a local hire ex-military contractor who's been on our radar for years. This was a sanctioned operation by a foreign government." Emma felt cold. "That means this doesn't end here." "No, it doesn't. They wanted Kensington bad enough to risk an overt operation on U.S. soil. That's a major escalation." Walsh lowered her voice. "There's more. We found communication equipment in their vehicle. They were transmitting to someone we don't know who yet, but the signal was going to a location about 40 miles from here. Could be a forward operating base, could be exfil team, could be command and control. You want me to sit tight while you investigate. We want you to stay on Kensington until we're certain he's secure. The threat assessment just went from elevated to critical. These people lost 4 operators and still got nothing. They're going to be angry, desperate, and looking for another opportunity." Emma nodded. "How long?" 72 hours minimum. We're moving Kensington to a secure facility tomorrow. You'll accompany him, maintain close protection until we've rolled up the rest of this network." "Copy that." Walsh hesitated. "One more thing. The brass wants to discuss your actions today. There are questions about proportional response rules of engagement, whether you exceeded your authority. I saved lives and stopped an international incident. If they have problems with how I did it, they can file a complaint. That's the attitude that's going to get you in trouble, Martinez. I'm a SEAL. We're always in trouble for something." Walsh almost smiled. "Fair point. Just be prepared for pushback. Some people in DC think you were too aggressive, that you should have tried harder to capture at least one hostile alive for interrogation. Those people weren't here. They didn't see the tactical situation. They didn't have to make the call with civilians in danger and limited backup." Emma's voice was hard. "I did what needed to be done. I'd do it again." "I know, and for what it's worth, I agree with you. But politics don't care about tactical reality." Walsh squeezed Emma's shoulder. "Go back in there. Those people need closure, and you're the only one who can give it to them." Emma returned to the conference room, where the conversation had shifted to logistics, when they could leave how to explain the situation to their companies, whether they needed counseling services. Emma listened, offered information where she could, and gradually felt the group settling into something like acceptance. Chad approached her as the meeting was breaking up. "I know you probably can't answer this, but I have to ask. Is Kensington still in danger?" Emma measured her words carefully. "The immediate threat has been neutralized, but these things are never completely over until every part of the network is rolled up. He'll have protection until we're certain he's safe." "Will that protection be you?" "For the next few days, yes." "Good." Chad extended his hand. "Thank you for what you did today. And I mean that not just for saving lives, but for teaching me something I needed to learn. I'm a different person than I was yesterday, and that's because of you." Emma shook his hand. "You're a different person because you were willing to learn. That's on you, not me." Derek was next. "I just want you to know what happened in the gym. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life. Not because you beat me, but because you showed me what real strength looks like. It's not about being the biggest or the loudest or the most aggressive. It's about being competent, controlled, and capable of handling whatever comes your way." "That's a good lesson to take home," Emma said. Patricia Morrison was the last to say goodbye. "My father always told me that real heroes never look like what you expect. You proved that today. The world needs more people like you, Emma. People who are willing to stand between danger and the innocent, no matter the cost." "I'm not a hero. I'm just a soldier doing her job." "That's what heroes always say." Patricia pulled Emma into a hug. "Stay safe out there." And if you ever want to have a conversation about what comes after military service, call me. I mean that. Emma accepted the business card, knowing she'd probably never use it, but grateful for the offer. By 10 o'clock that evening, the facility had finally quieted. Most participants were in their rooms processing the day's events. FBI agents continued working the scene, collecting evidence, documenting everything. Emma made her way to Kensington's secured suite, where she'd be spending the night on protective detail. He was sitting at his desk, working on a laptop, despite everything that had happened. "You should be resting," Emma said. "Can't. Too much work to do. Markets open in a few hours, and I've got 3 board meetings tomorrow that I need to prepare for." He looked up. "Do you ever rest, Lieutenant? When the mission's over?" "And when is the mission over?" "When I say it is." Kensington closed his laptop. "I've been thinking about what happened today. The shots you took, the decisions you made. You're 26 years old and you have that level of capability. Do you know how rare that is? There are plenty of operators with similar capabilities. I'm not special. That's where you're wrong. I've worked with security contractors, military advisors, protection details from a dozen different organizations. You're different. It's not just your skills. It's your judgment, your calmness under pressure, the way you prioritize civilian safety over everything else. That hostage shot, most operators would have waited for a better angle, a safer opportunity. You took the hard shot because it was the right thing to do." Emma didn't respond. She wasn't comfortable with praise, never had been. "I'm going to make some calls tomorrow," Kensington continued. "There are people in the Department of Defense who need to know what you did here. This operation was textbook perfect, and you deserve recognition." "I don't want recognition. I want to get back to my team." "Why? So you can go back to being underestimated and overlooked, so you can spend your career proving yourself to people who will never fully appreciate what you bring to the table." Kensington stood up, walked to the window. "You could write your own ticket after today. Any private security firm in the world would pay you 7 figures. Government agencies would fight over you. You could teach at the Special Operations Command, shape the next generation of operators. I'm a SEAL. That's who I am. That's what I do. For now. But what about in 5 years, 10 years? How long can you sustain this level of operational tempo before it breaks you?" He turned to face her. "I'm not trying to recruit you away from the Navy. I'm trying to get you to think about your future. You have options most people never dream of." Emma met his eyes. "Sir, with respect, I'm not thinking about my future right now. I'm thinking about the next 72 hours and keeping you alive. Everything else can wait." "Fair enough." Kensington returned to his desk. "But when this is over, think about what I said. You've earned the right to choose your own path." Emma took up position near the door, settling in for a long night. Her mind drifted to the events of the day, the obstacle course that had blown her cover, the combat training that had revealed too much, the firefight that had proven what she was truly capable of. Every decision she'd made had been tactical, necessary, justified. But Kensington was right about one thing: she couldn't sustain this forever. Her phone buzzed. Encrypted message from her team leader. "Heard about today. Clean operation. Well done. Team's proud of you. Come home when you're ready." Emma typed back, 72 hours. Then I'm all yours. The response was immediate. "We'll have a beer waiting." She smiled, feeling some of the day's tension finally release. This was what she lived for. Not the praise or recognition, but the knowledge that her team had her back, that she'd done her job well, that when it mattered most, she'd been ready. Tomorrow, the FBI would move Kensington to a secure location. They'd continue investigating the Russian operation, tracking down contacts, building a case. Emma would stay close, provide protection, and do whatever was necessary to ensure the mission's success. But tonight, in the quiet hours before dawn, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. She'd come to this facility as Emma Richardson, corporate consultant, and she was leaving as Lieutenant Emma Martinez, Navy SEAL. The mask had been stripped away, the cover blown, but the mission had succeeded. And maybe in the process she'd taught a room full of powerful people. Something worth learning, that strength comes in unexpected packages, that assumptions are dangerous, and that the most capable person in the room is often the one you never see coming until it's too late. The mountain air was cold through the window, crisp and clean. Emma closed her eyes for just a moment, letting her training kick in the part of her that could rest, while staying alert, that could recover while remaining ready. Because the mission wasn't over yet. And until it was, she'd be exactly what she'd always been, a guardian, standing between danger and the innocent, quiet and unassuming until the moment action was required. Then, as today had proven, she was something else entirely. Something that had taken years to build, countless hours of training to perfect, and more courage than most people would ever need in a lifetime. She was a weapon wrapped in a smile, a storm hiding behind calm eyes, a promise that no matter how bad things got, someone would be there to stand in the gap. She was a SEAL. And that, Emma thought, as the night stretched on around her, was enough. Dawn came cold and gray, filtering through the windows of Kensington's suite, where Emma had maintained watch throughout the night. She'd slept in 40-minute intervals, her body trained to rest, while her mind stayed alert for threats that never materialized. Kensington was still asleep when her phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Walsh Transport. Arrives at 0800. Secure facility ready. FBI director wants to speak with you personally before transfer. Emma typed back a confirmation, then moved quietly to check the perimeter. The facility was coming alive. Kitchen staff, arriving security making rounds, early risers heading to the gym. Everything looked normal, but normal was when attacks happened. When people got comfortable, let their guard down, assumed the danger had passed. At 7:30, Kensington emerged from his bedroom already dressed in a suit, despite the chaos of the previous day. Lieutenant, any developments? Transport arrives in 30 minutes. We'll move you to a federal facility for the next 48 hours while FBI wraps up the investigation. And then you go back to your life with upgraded security protocols and a very expensive lesson about taking threats seriously. He almost smiled. Point taken. What about the other participants? Are they safe to leave? FBI's cleared them. Most are heading out this morning. Emma checked her watch. You should eat something before we move. It's going to be a long day. While Kensington picked at breakfast, Emma's mind was already running through the transfer protocol, route planning, choke points, backup procedures, contingency plans if something went wrong. The Russians had lost 4 operators yesterday, but intelligence suggested a larger network. Desperate people made desperate moves. Agent Walsh arrived at 7:55 with a convoy of 3 armored SUVs. Ready to roll, Martinez. Always. Good. Because we've got a situation. Overnight we intercepted communications suggesting a second team might be in the area. Local assets, not Russian nationals. They know we're moving Kensington today. Emma felt her pulse quicken. How solid is the intelligence? 70% confidence. Could be noise, could be a real threat. Either way, we're taking it seriously. Route's been changed twice. We'll have air support and local PD running interference. You'll ride with Kensington in the primary vehicle. Who's driving? Me. Walsh met Emma's eyes. I'm not asking anyone to take risks I won't take myself. They moved Kensington out through a secure exit, Emma staying close, her hand near her concealed weapon. The morning air was sharp, the mountains looming like silent witnesses. Kensington moved quickly professional, despite his lack of military training. He'd finally understood that his life depended on following instructions. Emma slid into the back seat beside him, while Walsh took the wheel. 2 agents rode in the vehicle ahead, 3 more behind. The convoy pulled out at precisely 8 o'clock, moving fast down the mountain road. "How long until we're secure?" Kensington asked. 90 minutes, Walsh replied. "Federal facility is outside Denver. Once we're there, you're untouchable." They'd been driving for 20 minutes when Emma's instincts started screaming. Something was wrong. The road ahead curved through dense forest, the kind of terrain that offered 1,000 hiding spots. Perfect ambush country. Walsh, slow down. "What? Something's not right. This section of road, it's too perfect for an ambush. If I were planning a hit, this is exactly where I'd do it." Walsh's hands tightened on the wheel. "You think they're here?" "I think we need to be ready," and she keyed her radio. "All units weapons condition 1. Eyes open. If anything moves in those trees, I want to know about it." They rounded the curve doing 45 miles per hour, every nerve in Emma's body singing with tension. Then she saw it, a glint of metal in the trees 50 yards ahead. Sunlight reflecting off something that didn't belong. "Contact left," Emma shouted. The RPG streaked out of the forest, a trail of smoke marking its path. Walsh yanked the wheel hard right, the SUV's tires screaming. The rocket missed by inches, impacting the road behind them with a concussive blast that rattled Emma's teeth. "Go, go, go!" Emma yelled. Walsh floored it, the SUV surging forward. Behind them, the trail vehicle swerved around the crater, maintaining formation. Ahead, the lead vehicle was returning fire into the forest, suppressed weapons barking 3-round bursts. Emma pushed Kensington down. "Stay low. Don't move unless I tell you to move." More gunfire erupted from both sides of the road. The ambush had been well-planned crossfire from elevated positions, multiple shooters, professional tactics. The SUV's armored windows starred from impacts, but held. Walsh kept driving, weaving between bullet strikes, her face calm despite the chaos. "How many shooters?" Walsh barked. "At least 6, Emma replied, scanning the tree line. "Maybe more. They're coordinating, waiting for us to stop." "We're not stopping." But then the road ahead erupted in a fireball. An IED, hidden and remotely detonated, had turned the lead vehicle into a twisted wreck. It lay on its side, blocking the entire road. Walsh hit the brakes, the SUV shuddering to a halt 30 feet from the burning vehicle. "Shit!" Emma was already moving. "We're sitting ducks here. We need to reverse out, find another route." But the trail vehicle was also stopped, unable to back up because of the damaged road surface behind them. They were boxed in burning vehicle ahead, crater behind shooters on both sides. "This is exactly what they wanted," Emma said, her mind racing through options. "They funneled us into a kill zone." Walsh was on the radio. "All units, we are static and taking fire. Requesting immediate air support and ground reinforcement. Current position." The windshield exploded, inward bullets punching through. Walsh grunted, hit in the shoulder. She slumped forward, blood spreading across her jacket. Emma grabbed the wheel, killed the engine. "Walsh, stay with me. How bad?" "I'm okay," Walsh gasped, but her face was pale. "Just a graze." It wasn't a graze. The bullet had gone through her shoulder, possibly nicked an artery. She needed medical attention fast. Emma keyed the radio. "Martinez to all units. Agent Walsh is hit. I'm assuming command. Everyone maintain defensive positions. Do not exit vehicles unless absolutely necessary. Air support. What's your ETA?" 12 minutes, a voice crackled back. 12 minutes, an eternity in a firefight. Emma assessed their tactical situation, boxed in limited ammunition, one casualty-protected asset to maintain hostile force with superior positioning and numbers. The textbook said, "Wait for reinforcement." But textbooks didn't account for Walsh bleeding out, or the possibility that 12 minutes might be too long. Emma made a decision. "Kensington, get in the driver's seat. Stay low, engine off. If I tell you to drive, you drive. Understand? Where are you going? To even the odds." Emma grabbed Walsh's rifle, checked the magazine. Full. She took 3 spare mags from the tactical bag in the back seat, stuffed them in her pockets. Then she looked at Kensington. "If I don't make it back, you wait for air support. Don't be a hero." "Martinez, you can't go out there alone," Walsh tried to protest. "Watch me." Emma opened the door and rolled out low, using the SUV for cover. Bullets immediately stitched the ground near her, kicking up dirt and asphalt. She low-crawled to the rear of the vehicle, then sprinted for the tree line, zigzagging to throw off the shooter's aim. She made the trees as rounds chewed through branches overhead. Once in cover, Emma became something different. Not a protector, not a guardian, but a hunter. This was what SEALs trained for, what separated them from regular forces. The ability to go on offense when everyone else stayed defensive. She moved through the forest like smoke, using terrain and vegetation for concealment. Her breathing was controlled, her movements precise. She'd done this in Afghanistan, in Yemen, in places so classified they didn't have names. Hunt the hunters. Turn the ambush around. The first shooter never saw her coming. He was focused downrange on the convoy finger on his trigger when Emma came up behind him. A quick strike to the throat, a twist, and he was down without firing a shot. She took his radio, his extra ammunition. 4 voices on the radio speaking English with Eastern European accents, probably Ukrainian or Georgian contractors hired by the Russians. Mercenaries. Professionals, but not elite. That gave her an advantage. Emma keyed the captured radio. "Alpha Team, this is Bravo 2. I've got movement on the south side. Looks like law enforcement flanking." "Copy Bravo 2. How many?" "At least a dozen. Coming in fast." She heard cursing over the radio, then, "All units prepare to disengage. Exfil protocol, Charlie." Perfect. She'd just convinced them they were about to be overwhelmed. They'd panic, make mistakes, create opportunities. Emma moved to her next target, a shooter positioned on elevated ground with a clear line to the convoy. He was already packing up, preparing to withdraw. She put 2 rounds in his back from 20 yards. He went down hard. The radio exploded with chatter. "Bravo 2 is down. We've got an active shooter in the trees. Give me a position." Emma was already moving, relocating before they could triangulate her location. She found the 3rd shooter trying to flank around to her previous position. He died before he realized his mistake. The remaining 3 shooters were panicking now, firing randomly into the forest, wasting ammunition. Emma could hear them calling for their exfil vehicle, demanding immediate pickup. She keyed the captured radio one more time. "This is Bravo 2. I'm hit. They're everywhere. We need to abort now." That did it. The remaining shooters broke cover, running for a vehicle hidden deeper in the forest. Emma tracked them through the trees, let them get to the vehicle, a beat-up panel van, and start the engine. Then she put 5 rounds through the windshield. The van swerved, crashed into a tree. 1 shooter tumbled out, weapon raised. Emma dropped him. The others stayed in the van, either dead or too injured to fight. The forest went quiet. Emma made her way back to the convoy, moving carefully, checking corners. When she emerged from the trees, weapons lowered as the agents recognized her. "Clear," she called out. "All hostiles down or disabled." She ran to the SUV where Kensington was pressing a tourniquet to Walsh's shoulder. "How is she?" "Conscious, losing blood, but the tourniquet is helping." Emma checked Walsh's pupils, her pulse. "You're going to be okay. Medical choppers are en route." Walsh managed a weak smile. "You just took out an entire ambush team by yourself. 6 contractors, and I had the element of surprise." 6. Walsh coughed, winced. "When we debrief this, I'm recommending you for a commendation. I'd rather you just heal up and keep doing your job." The helicopter appeared overhead minutes later, Not medical, but Apache gunships providing air support. They circled the area, making sure no additional threats remained. The medical chopper arrived 10 minutes after that, EMTs scrambling to stabilize Walsh and the agents from the overturned lead vehicle. Emma stayed with Kensington as FBI reinforcements secured the scene. Agents moved through the forest, documenting bodies, collecting evidence, piecing together what had happened. The whole operation had taken less than 20 minutes from first contact to resolution, but Emma felt like she'd aged a year. "You saved all of us," Kensington said quietly. "Again. That's the job. That's not the job. That's valor. That's courage under fire. That's everything the military medals are supposed to represent." He looked at her with something like awe. "How many times have you done something like this? Enough that it feels routine. Not enough that it gets easy." They were extracted by helicopter to the secure facility where Emma finally allowed herself to breathe. The medical team checked her over minor cuts and bruises, nothing serious. Walsh was already in surgery, prognosis good. The agents from the lead vehicle had survived with various injuries. 0 civilian casualties. Mission success. The FBI director called her that evening. "Lieutenant Martinez, I've been briefed on your actions over the past 48 hours. 4 hostiles neutralized in close quarters combat, 1 hostage rescued, and 6 more hostiles eliminated in an ambush situation while protecting a high-value asset. That's extraordinary work." "Thank you, sir. Just doing what I was trained to do." "The training is one thing. The execution is another. I'm told you single-handedly turned an ambush around, saved multiple lives, and completed your mission with 0 civilian casualties. That's not just training. That's exceptional judgment and courage." Emma didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. "I'm going to be frank with you, Lieutenant. There are people in Washington who want to make an example of you in a good way. They want to put you on recruiting posters, use your story to inspire the next generation. They see you as a symbol. I don't want to be a symbol. I want to be an operator. I understand that. But you should also understand that what you've accomplished matters beyond your individual missions. You've proven something important, that capability has nothing to do with appearance, that the most dangerous person in the room isn't always who you expect." The director paused. "That's a lesson this country needs right now." 3 days later, Emma stood in the Summit facility's parking lot, watching the last participants load their vehicles. The place felt different now, emptier, haunted by what had happened here. Crime scene tape still fluttered around the areas where the firefight had occurred. Chad approached her, his expression serious. "I heard about the second ambush, the one where you went into the forest alone. News travels fast. Emma, what you did going out there alone against 6 armed contractors, that's insane. It was tactical. They had superior positioning. I had superior training. It was heroic. There's a difference." Chad extended his hand. "I'm not going to see you again, probably. But I want you to know that you changed my life. I've spent the past 3 days thinking about every assumption I've ever made, every person I've underestimated, every opportunity I've missed because I couldn't see past the surface. That's on me, and I'm going to do better. Because of you. Don't do better because of me. Do better because it's right." "Fair enough," he smiled. "But I'm still going to think of you every time I'm tempted to make snap judgments. The woman who looked like she didn't belong anywhere ended up belonging everywhere." Patricia Morrison was next, pulling Emma into a fierce hug. "Stay safe out there, warrior. The world needs you." Derek and Tom and Marcus all said their goodbyes, each carrying lessons learned, perspectives shifted, assumptions shattered. Robert Chang was the last to approach, still pale, but standing steady. "I'm going to tell my kids about you someday," he said. "About the woman who saved my life, who stayed calm when I was falling apart, who made the impossible shot look routine. And I'm going to tell them that heroes don't always look like what you expect. Tell them that heroes are just people who do what needs to be done when no one else can. Emma watched them leave one by one, returning to their lives, carrying pieces of a story that would shape how they saw the world. She'd come here to protect one man, and ended up teaching dozens of people something they'd never forget. Her phone buzzed. Message from her team leader. "Heard you had an interesting week. Ready to come home?" She typed back. "More than ready." "Good. We've got a mission spinning up. Wheels up in 72 hours. Briefing when you get back. I'll be there." Emma climbed into her rental car, started the engine, and began the long drive back to her base. She thought about the past week, the cover blown, the skills revealed, the lives saved. She thought about Chad's evolution from arrogant dismissal to genuine respect. She thought about Derek learning that strength came in forms he'd never imagined. She thought about Patricia recognizing military bearing because her father had taught her what to look for. Most of all, she thought about what she'd proven not to them but to herself. That being underestimated was a weapon you could wield with precision. That looking harmless was its own kind of armor. That the most powerful statement you could make was letting your actions speak louder than your words. The mountains fell away behind her, replaced by highways and cities, and the ordinary world where people lived ordinary lives. But Emma wasn't ordinary, had never been ordinary, would never be ordinary. She was a SEAL, trained to go where others couldn't, to do what others wouldn't, to stand between danger and the innocent, no matter the cost. And the next time someone looked at her and saw a small, quiet woman who didn't belong, she'd smile and let them think whatever they wanted. Right up until the moment they discovered too late, always too late, that they'd chosen the wrong person to underestimate. Because Emma Martinez had learned the most important lesson of all. The strongest weapon you could carry wasn't a gun or a knife or your fists. It was the unshakable knowledge of who you were and what you were capable of, regardless of what anyone else thought. And that weapon, that never ran out of ammunition, never needed reloading, and never ever missed when it mattered most.